In the far northeast of Argentina, in the high and arid landscapes of the Andes, bordering Bolivia, archaeologists have excavated pre-Hispanic ruins, home to people who lived here before the Inca Empire came to dominate the region, and long before the arrival of the Spanish. Dozens of settlements have been found, like those at Quilmes and Tilcara, each hosting several thousand people. This area is also famous for its huge, multicolored rock formations and mountain cliffs, but with fertile river valleys cutting through the dramatic landscape. At the higher altitudes, salt flats can be found at elevations of almost 15,000 feet. The descendants of the people who lived in ruined and lost settlements like Quilmes and Tilcara can be found today in towns such as Purmamarca and Humahuaca. These places have become popular for travellers attracted by the stunning geography and the customs of the people. Purmamarca is small, a village almost, and famous for coloured rock cliffs that overlook it. Humahuaca is bigger, more of a town. An even more spectacular kaleidoscope of rock formations can be found 40 minutes outside the town at 4,000 metres high up in the Andes. It's a rocky drive on winding mountain dirt roads to get there. Here, high mountain cemeteries dot the sparse landscape. And roaming herds of llama and vicuna can be found. The Spanish conquered this region in the 16th century, and the tribes here were driven out of their hilltop settlements. It wasn't until the early 19th century that Argentina gained its independence, celebrated by a massive sculpture above Humahuaca by native Tilcara sculptor Ernesto Soto Avendano. Atop sits a native Indian, arm raised in freedom. Before independence, the area had been a transit route for silver coming from nearby Bolivia, and with the coming of the railways, a line ran high up into the Andes. It's long shut down, but the relics of this bygone era remain in places like Vulcan. Nowadays, the indigenous people of the Andes embrace their ancient heritage more than ever. Special flags fly over the ruined settlements of Quilmes and Tilcara, a reminder of their special significance and status, and local travellers visit to eagerly learn the history of their ancestors.
The southern Patagonia icefield, which stretches across both Chile and Argentina, is the third largest in the world, after those found in Antarctica and Greenland, covering an area of almost 5,000 square miles. About half of the icefield can be found in Argentina in the Parque Nacional Los Glaciares. Created a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1981, it contains more than 300 glaciers. Its most famous, and one of the largest and most spectacular, is the Puerto Moreno glacier. It's 35 kilometers long, 5 kilometers wide, containing more than 60 meters of ice above the waterline. This constitutes only 10% of the glacier's depth. Another 600 meters of ice and rock exists below the waterline. The glacier has become one of Argentina's most visited tourist sites. Boats take hundreds of tourists each day to within a few hundred meters of the glacier's solid ice wall. You can also view the glacier at even closer range on tastefully constructed walkways which almost overlook this extraordinary phenomenon. This national park also contains giant lakes and fjords, and chartered boats take tourists even deeper into the park, navigating inland waterways dotted with icebergs and rimmed by spectacular cliffs and mountain peaks. Evolutionary biologist Charles Darwin visited this place on one of his famous journeys. Over 100 years ago, pioneering settlers also came to this desolate, isolated, but beautiful landscape, attracted by huge land grants handed out by the government in return for raising sheep on giant haciendas at the height of the wool boom. The Estancia Cristina was established by Englishman Percival Masters and his wife Henrietta, who lived here for the rest of their lives, raising 2 children, Herbert and Christina. Christina died young, but Herbert worked the hacienda, which at its height had 14,000 sheep, until he died in 1984. The shearing sheds and other buildings, including a water wheel constructed to bring water to the hacienda, are still here. Before he died, Herbert married Janet, who originally cared for his ailing parents, so the estancia could remain in the family. After it was decreed by the government that it would become part of the newly created national park once the last family member died, which Janet did in 1992. The estancia now offers tours through a spectacular and isolated glaciated landscape to view some of the most awesome glaciers in the national park, of which it is now a part. These include the largest, the Uppsala Glacier, named after Swedish scientists from Uppsala University who came to explore these extraordinary remnants from the Ice Age. Above and beyond the ice, layers of rock from these glaciers are clearly visible all around, as are fossils formed over time. In addition to scientists, polar explorers came here to acclimatise for polar journeys and formed close bonds with its custodian, Herbert Masters. Today, the original Christina boat, built using instructions from a popular mechanics magazine, lies rotting and isolated in a remote corner of the hacienda, which is also named after Herbert's sister. But the extraordinary ice fields and glaciers, which have been here since the beginning of time, remain. They are now part of an incredible national park. The precious ice fields of Patagonia do what they have always done, acting as climate regulators, reflecting back light into the atmosphere and providing a huge freshwater reservoir for the planet.
Just an hour by fast catamaran from Buenos Aires is the tranquil small coastal city of Colonia de Sacramento, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Founded as a Portuguese colony in 1680, Colonia was ruled alternatively by both Portugal and Spain. Ownership between the two changed half a dozen times in just 150 years, until it was incorporated in modern-day Uruguay in 1828. The old port town, with its narrow cobblestone streets and preserved colonial buildings, offers a welcome day trip escape from the hustle and bustle of Buenos Aires. Here, beautiful, timeless Colonia awaits. It's expensive compared to Buenos Aires, but well worth a day trip.
Spectacular red rock ravines and canyons are a signature site in Argentina's rugged Andean northwest. They line the spectacular Ruta 68, connecting Salta to Cafayate, a journey of 180 kilometers. Surreal rock formations, like the Devil's Throat, can be found along the way. The route is known as the Quebrada de Cafayate. And throughout its length, the Rio Conchas flows through the fertile valley floor, which attracts wild herds of goats, horses, and llamas.
In the mid-19th century, this most famous of Buenos Aires barrios became home to poor Spanish and Italian migrants who settled along the Rio Riachuelo. Literally meaning the mouth, La Boca, located in the far south of modern-day Buenos Aires, was the gateway for millions to a new land, world and life. By the 1880s, many of them were working in the meatpacking plants and warehouses, processing and shipping out much of Argentina's newly refrigerated beef to the world, a trade in frozen meat that would make the country rich. The country's population would grow from 90,000 to 1.5 million in just 50 years. Many of those immigrants would come to Buenos Aires, and many ended up here in La Boca. These poor port dwellers would spruce leftover paint used to maintain the port's barges on the corrugated iron walls of their houses, starting a tradition that has survived and given this famous barrio its identity ever since. Nowhere more so is this evident than along El Caminito, the barrio's most famous street, now one of Buenos Aires' most popular tourist attractions. Another of La Boca's iconic sites from this nation-building era is the Puente Transbordado, a famous transporter bridge built in 1908 and today one of only a handful left in the world. Built to transport cars, trains and people across the Rio Riachuelo, it was replaced by Puente Nicolas Avellaneda in 1939, which now stands directly behind it.
In the far northeast of Argentina, flowing through the jungles of Misiones province, is the Iguazu River. As it nears the border with Brazil, the waters gather pace. Soon they will descend into the largest waterfall system in the world, the Iguazu Falls. The falls are made up of almost 200 separate waterfalls. They are located in the northeast corner of Argentina on the border with Paraguay and Brazil. The best views of the falls can be found on the Brazilian side, where a series of walkways take you up close and personal with some of the 80 largest waterfalls here. On the Argentinian side, where the falls are located, it's less crowded, as the walkways are scattered over a larger area. But a walk into the mouth of the Devil's Throat, the Garganta del Diablo, gets you closer to the waterfalls than anywhere else. Half the water that crashes from the falls descends from here. The Devil's Throat is 80 meters wide and 80 meters deep. Only the Victoria Falls in Africa spews a greater sheet of water from any one waterfall. If you want to experience what it's like at the bottom of these magnificent falls, you can opt to take a boat trip under the falls themselves. For a quieter experience, spot wildlife in the national park, including the magnificent toucan. 1.5 million people visit the park every year. But the park management here is superb. This, after all, is one of the great wonders of the world.